service of the living tradition. I'm Amanda Thomas, your music leader for this service. While folks are still finding their way in, we will sing a bit to get this experience started. Our first song will begin with the ostinato, though we've broken our vows 1,000 times. We will need folks to continue on the ostinato and the rest to join in later on the round. Come on, choir, let's get them started.
Though we've broken our vows 1,000 times, though we've broken our vows 1,000 times, though we've broken our vows 1,000 times, though we've broken our vows 1,000 times. Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worship, or love, or weeping, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yeah, let him come. Come, come, whoever you are, wonder, worship, or love, or weeping, ours is no caravan of despair. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yeah, let whoever you are, wonder, worship, or love, or weeping, ours is no caravan of despair. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yeah, let whoever you are, wonder, worship, or love, or weeping, ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yeah, let come. Come, yeah, let
In the words of Issei Marie Barnwell, kumbaya, or come by here in the Gullah language, has become snarky shorthand for feel-good or weak-minded groupthink. A soulful cry sung by the Georgia Sea Island slaves, the song was carried on by Southern blacks in the time of Jim Crow and lynch mobs, and later by the Freedom Riders when they learned that 3 of their workers had been murdered by Klansmen. When people say it was a kumbaya moment, it clearly was not a kumbaya moment. It's actually an invocation for God to come by here now because things are needed. If you hear people use it mistakenly, please gently correct them. Let us sing it now together as the Georgia Sea Island slaves and Southern blacks in the time of Jim Crow sang it. Let us sing it with hope for something better in this life as we continue to fight racism, ableism, classism, and all the other isms. Come by here. Come by here, my Lord. Come by here. Come by here, my Lord. Come by here.
here, my Lord, come by here. Oh Lord, come by here.
Rosa Marta Cirate Macias uses her rich musical texts and talents and courageous leadership in championing the rights of the Mexican and Latinx communities in this country. She migrated to this country from Mexico in 1968 and currently stands as the artistic spokesperson for the Hispanic people, as she has a strong commitment to building a new world order.
The English translation of Profetiza, Pueblo Mío. Prophesy, O my people, prophesy one more time. Let your voice be the echo of the outcries of all oppressed. Prophesy, O my people, prophesy one more time. Announce to them the coming of a new society. I sanctify you, prophet. Banish all doubt and fear. Be faithful to your mission, that quest that leads us on. Announce to all the people that justice promised long, restored to every nation, true peace throughout the world. Denounce all who are causing oppression, sorrow, tears. Let truth be your protection, the light of a new sun. Let this be what you hope for, the battle that you choose, to build a social order with justice at its core.
Profetiza, pueblo mío, profetiza una vez más, que tu voz sale con el clamor de los pueblos en opresión. Profetiza, pueblo mío, profetiza una vez más, anunciándole a los pobres una nueva sociedad. Profetiza,
introduction. Please be seated. Time and time again, there is a call.
A call to lead the work of transformation.
A call to help heal.
A call to testify.
A call to disrupt.
A call to create something new.
A call to help others see their potential, their role in crafting a world that is always pushing towards more justice, more peace, and more love.
We rejoice that some choose to live out their calling in the name of Unitarian Universalism. These include the certified music leaders, credentialed religious educators, and newly and final fellowship ministers whom we celebrate tonight.
It includes the retirees whose years of service we honor, and the leaders we lost this year through death and whose absence we mourn.
Yet we come together tonight not just to celebrate. We come not just as witnesses, but as co-creators of this faith's living tradition. We ask ourselves, how will I support these religious professionals in their calling? And what will become of this faith they are called to?
Every action has a reaction. Whether or not you are a religious professional, you play a part in how these callings are lived out. As we recognize their achievements, let us also acknowledge how much we need one another. As our president, the Reverend Susan Frederick Gay, says, we cannot do this alone. Tonight is not just about the honorees. It is about all of us and our shared role in co-creating Unitarian Universalism. It is about who we have been as a people of faith and who we are all called to be.
Welcome to the service of the living tradition.
I call forth these individuals who received preliminary fellowship. Aisha N. Asano. John B. Balance. Amanda Beal. Jacqueline Canty Brett. Julie Brock. Terry A. Brunor. Rita Antoinette Capizzi. Leslie Chartier. Jonathan Coffey. Terry Cunningham. Aaron Morgit Dike Holly. Dana K. Davies. Donna Dolham. Megan R. Dowdell. Adam Lawrence Dyer. TJ Fitzgerald. Valerie Fessiman. Kaylee Fire. Stephanie Gannon. Mary Marjorie Gear. Deborah Guthrie. Jan Hutzler. Elizabeth Ide. Monica Diane Jacobson Tennyson. Kevin Jago. Claudia Liliana Jimenez. Kelly Kelly. Ellie Kilpatrick. Alex Klingenberg. David Miller Kohlmeyer. Sadie Camp Lansdale. Bob Laville. Elizabeth Leclerc. William Levewood. Danielle Lindstrom. Erica Rose Long. Edith Amanda Love. Jason Linden. Natalie Malter. Tawanya Jadi Marcus. Johanna Margaret Murphy. Otto O'Connor. Jolie Olte. Kayla Parker. Jennifer Peak. Lisa Perry Wood. Cynthia Pincus. Sarah Prickett. Mark S. Richards. Beth Robbins. Craig Anthony Rubano. Bethany Russell Love. Misha Sanders. Connie Simon. McKinley L. Sims. Diana Leah Smith. Elizabeth Soley. Christina E. Spouty. Cynthia Stewart. Karen Van Fossen. Jennifer Jo Von Roo. Amanda Jean Witherspoon. Elizabeth Louise Weber. Kimberly Wu Tan. Jamie Yandel. Laura Young.
I call forth from among you this person who has been certified as credentialed religious educator master level, Sheila Schuh. I call forth from among you these persons who have been certified as credentialed religious educators, Kirsten Hunter. Claudia Liliana Jimenez. Katie Seipert. Lauren Strauss. I call forth from among you these persons who have completed their careers of full-time service as a credentialed religious educator, Jeanette Ruyle. As a credentialed religious educator master level, Patti Withers.
I call forth from among you this person who has successfully completed the portfolio path of study and is now a credentialed music leader, Keith J. Arnold. I call forth from among you these persons who have successfully completed the program of study and are now certified music leaders, Sarah Brandt Dole. Elaine Brown. Scott DeVoe. Pam Siegler.
I call forth among you those ministers who have received final fellowship. Summer Albayati. Karen Armina. Charlotte Arsenault. Robin Bartlett. Carol Baudou. Laura KJ Campbell. Kathy Chang. Joseph M. Cherry. Mary Frances Cummer. Heather Concannon. Patrice Kimberly Curtis. Beth Dana. Kelly Dignan. Susan Marguerite Stein Dunham. Peter Faraday. James Fonte. Rebecca Heather Frum. Lynn D. Garner. Carl Gregg. Fiona Heath. Christiana Haiti. Rebecca C. Hines. Catherine A. Jessish. Chris Jemerson. Jeremiah La Shabazz Calendé. Cecilia Kotovich. Jay Libby. Jim McGaw. Justin Michael Martin. Stephanie May. Douglas E. McCusher. Lisa Daniel Hutchings. Andrew McDonald Moeller. Elizabeth Buffington Wynn. Jennifer Nordstrom. Sarah Christine Oglesby Dunnigan. Allison Palm. Gregory Pelly. Joseph Santos Lyons. Katie Scudera. Sally Elizabeth Shore. Eve M. Stevens. Kevin Tarsa. Maria Christina Valsith Borga. Gretchen E. Weiss. Margaret L. Weiss. Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf. Leslie Frenchu Woodward. Judy Zimmerman.
I call forth from among you these persons who have completed their careers of full-time service. Joy Atkinson. Vern Barnett. Lindsay Bates. Peggy S. Block. Bruce A. Bodie. Carla Brocky. Jack D. Bryant. John A. Burens. Lynn Stangland Cameron. Mark W. Christian. Lilia Cuervo. Earl K. Holt III. Fritz Hudson. Paul G. Hull, Jr. Mike Johnson. Christine Jones Levy. William Kennedy. David Keyes. Rick Klimowitz. Barbara McCusick Liscord. Beth Miller. Peter Morales. Mark D. Morrison Reed. Madeline Lynn Oglesby. Lee P. Page. Dean M. Perkins. Suzanne Redfern Campbell. Jeffrey Remacidis. Donald E. Robinson. Thomas Rosselio. Michael A. Schuler. Stanley Franklin Sears. Bruce Allen Southworth. Yvonne Schumacher Straycheck. Elwood R. Sturdivant. Barbara Whittaker Johns. Thomas D. Wintle. Constance Yost. Philip Zwirling. And now, will you please rise in body or in spirit as we sing Rank by Rank.
Do not be ashamed of your broken heart. It broke because you dared to use it, dared to stretch its shape to hold more love, because you used its beats to keep time to a song that only you could hear. And you, the owner of a well-used heart, are also loved. Come close. Let the love flow from our heart to yours, pouring in to mend the cracks, sliding in between the rusty gears until they tick again. Let your heart come back to life, broken and now broken open, which both may hurt and which can lead to room for much more love.
hands wide to touch the water flowing, and all alone the mountainside beyond the fields of clover. For you I sing the colors bright, dancing on the rainbow that moves across the darkened sky, a bridge that crosses over to all the places we have been, to those whose love has carried us like the birds who rise on wings through the clouds and over. For you I sing the colors bright, the voices of the children. For you I sing the colors bright, dancing on the rainbow. For you I sing, for you I sing, for you I sing the rainbow.
Each year, as we have for generations, we honor the religious professionals of our living tradition who have died during the last year. Into this sacred space, we lift up the names of these loved ones and dear colleagues. We honor with the speaking of their names the lives that they lived, the ministries they offered, the difference they made to the people and communities they served, the lives they touched with their leadership, their care, their wisdom, and their faithful presence. As we remember these religious leaders, we hold in our hearts their families, their communities, and their dear friends, and the grief that accompanies so deeply and tenderly our gratitude for the love and the life shared. Will you please rise in body or in spirit? Richard L. Allen, Sarah Barber Brown, Rebecca M. Blodgett, Marguerite Peggy C. Clayson, Beth Ellen Cooper, Alan G. Deal, E. Bonnie Devlin, Elizabeth A. Foster, Homer Jerry A. Goddard III, Catherine K. A. Greenleaf, Alfred J. N. Hendrickson, A. Philip B. Hewitt. Daniel G. Higgins, Jr. Catherine K. A. Jorgensen. Joan Kahn Schneider. Robert C. Kimball. Eugene W. Creeves. Edwin A. Lane. Sandra G. Lee. Robert H. McPherson. Donald W. McKinney. Berkeley L. Moore. Martha L. Munson. William R. Murray. Marcia W. Shekel. Peter Lee Scott. Charles S. Stephen, Jr. Robert Nelson West, Sr. Carl H. Whittier, Jr. Elizabeth Betts Winnicky. Charles L. Wilson. John B. Wolfe. Jack D. Zorhide. And it is with great sadness that I must add the following names to this list. Rudolph Rudy Gelsey. Victor Carpenter. These individuals passed away since May 17th and will receive full honors in 2019. I invite you to be seated. May we join our hearts together in a moment of prayer. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, that holds us close in a network of mutuality that extends through the generations, through time, linking us to all who have gone before and those who will come after us. Our hearts are humble in the midst of the great gift and the great mystery of this life. We honor these precious lives, these leaders who have gone before. In remembering them, we remember that we are not the first to struggle, to risk, to love and to fight and to celebrate, to know anguish and imperfection, to need forgiveness and grace. In remembering them, we remember our own responsibilities in the face of the brevity of life. Every moment that we are given is precious. May we, in remembering them, live our own lives in faithfulness, in compassion, and in service to the call of love and justice alive in our hearts. I invite us all now into a moment of collective silence, to be attentive to the memories, to the love, to the prayers, to the longings and the hope in our hearts.
Blessings. Blessings to you on the stage, and blessings to each and every one in this room. As you will soon learn, you make it possible for me to do my ministry. My name is Richard Nugent, and I'm honored to lead the staff team that manages the UUA health plan, retirement plan, compensation program, and particularly important this evening, our aid funds. In December, the Unitarian Universalist faith lost Denny Davidoff. Not only an extraordinary leader, but so much more. Denny was a friend to so many of us, and she was also a supported presence in the lives of her family, a committed lay leader, both within her congregation and beyond its doors, a dedicated supporter of theological education, a passionate voice for a more inclusive Unitarian Universalism, and a tireless advocate for a more just and compassionate society. From lay leadership in her congregation in the 1960s to the presidency of the UU Women's Federation in the 70s, Denny was a tireless advocate for gender equality. Denny served on the GA Planning Committee and the Ministerial Fellowship Committee before getting elected to the UUA Board of Trustees. From 2001 to 2009, Denny served as our moderator. In the years after she chaired the board of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, outside of Unitarian Universalism, Denny was a co-founder and president of the Interfaith Alliance and served on the board of the Alban Institute and was active in numerous Connecticut-based nonprofits. In 2006, Denny and Jerry Davidoff, her loving spouse and co-conspirator in so many causes, received the UUA Award for Distinguished Service. Denny loved to raise money for causes close to her heart. In her later years, her fundraising focused on Meadville Lombard Theological School, where she mentored class after class of seminarians, now ministers. Last year's General Assembly in New Orleans was Denny's 50th consecutive General Assembly, 5-0. At last year's Service of the Living Tradition, Denny stood here and spoke movingly on behalf of the Living Tradition Fund and the religious professionals and other congregational staff who benefit from it. Those of you here and throughout the hall, if you received a debt reduction grant or other assistance from the Living Tradition Fund through your life, please take a moment and wave your hands and look around, everybody. This is the interconnectedness from which we speak. These are the ripples of hope that your donations have touched. In deciding who should ask you to be as generous as possible in this year's offering to the Living Tradition Fund, which we are about to take, we thought it only appropriate to let Denny, one more time, do what she loved to do so often: ask Unitarian Universalists to financially support the faith that supports each of us and so many others. Denny's family was enthusiastic about Denny appearing via video at her 51st consecutive General Assembly. In the program at her memorial service, it was written that Denny, quote, always turned into the wind. There was rarely a strong current, choppy sea, or blistering wind that she would not face head on. In some way or another, everyone in this room or watching electronically has had their life enriched by the hard work, courageous vision, and endless love of Denny Davidoff. Denny, while you may be gone, you are certainly not forgotten. Your memory is written large on our hearts. May I introduce Denny Davidoff.
It is June 1971. Jerry and I have arrived in Boston early for the 1971 General Assembly, early enough so that finding that our dorm room at Boston University is airless and exceedingly unattractive, we have been able, though it's a bit beyond the budget, to secure an air-conditioned room in the nearby Howard Johnson's Inn. Unpacked, we are wandering around the edges of GA, and we run into the Reverend Clark Dewey Wells, who offers to sneak us into the service of the Living Tradition soon to commence at the Arlington Street Church. It's strictly for clergy, Clark tells us, but I'm thinking you two will like it. Oh my God, did we like it. For Jerry, who basically loved everything about General Assembly, really about the UUA, the SLT, this service of the Living Tradition, became the annual event in his religious life, maybe the annual event in his entire life. Jerry, lover of ministers, this one is for you. It is September 1963. And the Unitarian Church in Westport, the young Davidoff's congregation, is welcoming its very first student intern, a Meadville Lombard seminarian by the name of Ralph Merrow. 32 years later, Ralph Merrow relocates from Seattle to Boston to become the director of the UUA Office of Church Staff Finances. And my education as a Unitarian Universalist fundraiser begins. Some of you out there have heard me say that everything I know about asking for money big money from Unitarian Universalists, I learned from Ralph Merrow at the Service of the Living Tradition. Merrow Curriculum Lesson 1. Warn the folks that if you take out your checkbook any time before this offertory is done, do not fill out the amount. I can remember Ralph saying this. It will only require you writing another check. I want to speak tonight to my colleague lay leaders. I want to speak candidly, maybe even harshly, because we all know the truth sometimes bites and stings. And the truth is we mistreat our ministers financially. We call them into our congregations for as little money as we can get away with, and we blithely expect them to help us raise money that will fund our collective dreams. Please, Reverend, charm the large givers. Please, Reverend, lasso the pledge laggards. Please, Reverend, knock the sermon on the amount out of the ballpark. Please, Reverend, inspire the potential capital campaign shares. We take particular unfair advantage of women ministers. Yes, we do. Still, and we exploit our ministers of color. And don't get me started about our abysmal treatment of religious educators and musicians and other staff. In this regard, we are cheapskates without regard to race, gender identity, national origin. And then there are the intern ministers we love to exploit by not paying them anything. Like working for free is okay. Sitting behind me are new ministers. We are and will be calling and hiring to serve our congregations this year and in the years to come. They are recent seminary graduates, and many, possibly most of them, are mired in debt. The price they have paid to follow their insistent call to ministry, their insistent call to serve us. So please, if you would, stand if you are able and if you are willing. Stand if you have student loans and other educational debts. You could, oh yeah, you run the, thanks guys. Friends, I have stood next to a minister whose child is in terrible trouble. I have stood by while this minister, called Richard Nugent, who succeeded Ralph Merrow, called in desperation to request financial help from the Living Tradition Fund. And Richard has responded without hesitation. Yes, I'm sending you a check right now. Friends, I know ministers who have faced medical emergencies for themselves or family members that insurance did not cover, if indeed there was insurance. I have known retired ministers in their 90s whose careers did not straddle our fair compensation guidelines and who were in danger of losing their homes. Friends, I know a seminary student who was ill and couldn't work her part-time job and was facing eviction from her apartment. And I have known seminarians who requested emergency funds without which they could not continue their ongoing coursework. And Richard Nugent, like Ralph Merrow before him, has responded with a check, a lifeline, a blessing. We like to say that Unitarian Universalism saves lives. I can attest tonight that the living tradition saves ministers' lives. The very same ministers who save our congregation's lives over and over and over and over again. It is June 1988, and I am at General Assembly in Palm Springs, California. I am, in fact, chair of the GA Planning Committee. And with evidence of tremendous need presented, the delegates agree to create the Living Tradition Fund to provide 3 types of support for ministry: need-based scholarships for theological students who have completed a full year of theological education, new minister assistance to reduce the burden of high educational debt and repayment. This was actually in the resolution. Grants to ministers for emergency assistance. And in agreeing to create the fund, we assumed responsibility then, as we assume it tonight. We assume the responsibility for funding it generously, thankfully. Here is my check. I was going to write it for $100, which is a lot for me, but I kept hearing Ralph's urgent voice telling me to do better. So, okay, Ralph, it's for $200. Do better, my friends. Do better, please. The offering will now be taken.
As your gifts to benefit ministers and religious educators and musicians and administrators and other church staff are collected, I must acknowledge a generous gift from the Davidoff family to the Living Tradition Fund in memory of Denny's long-standing commitment to our faith. Again, blessings on each of you for all that you do.
Well, you know, it ain't right. It ain't right. Well, you know, it ain't right. No, it ain't right. You know, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. You know it's gone on far too long. You know it's gone on far too long. Ooh, somebody's hurting my brother, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. You know somebody's hurting my siblings, and it's gone on far too long. You know it's gone on far too long. You know it's gone on far too long. Oh yeah, somebody's hurting my siblings, and it's gone on far too long. You know we won't be silent anymore. You know somebody's poisoning our water, and it's gone on far too long. You know it's gone on far too long. Oh yes, it's gone on far too long. You know somebody's poisoning our water, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Come on and clap, y'all. You know somebody's taking our children, and it's gone on far too long. You know it's gone on far too long. You know it's gone on far too long. You know somebody's taking our children, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. You know somebody's spreading that hatred, and it's gone on far too long. You know it's gone on far too long. You know it's gone on far too long. You know somebody's spreading that hatred, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Oh yes, somebody's telling really won't be silent anymore. You know somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on far too long. You know it's gone on far too long. You know it's gone on far too long. You know somebody's hurting my sister, and it's gone on far too long. And we won't be silent anymore. Oh no, we won't be silent anymore. No, we won't be silent anymore.
Our reading this evening comes from Audre Lorde's commencement address, delivered at Oberlin College on May 29th, 1989. Audre Lorde defined herself as a Black, lesbian, mother, warrior poet, and as such, her wisdom resounds long past the span of her life. Here is the conclusion to her commencement address. The white fathers have told us, I think, therefore I am. But the Black mother within each one of us, the poet inside, whispers in our dreams, I feel, therefore I can be free. Learn to use what you feel to move you toward action. Change, personal and political, does not come about in a day, nor a year, but it is our day-to-day decisions, the way in which we testify with our lives to those things in which we say we believe, that empower us. Your power is relative, but it is real. And if you do not learn to use it, it will be used against you, against me, and our children. Change did not begin with you, and it will not end with you, but what you do with your life is an absolutely vital piece of that chain. The testimony of your daily living is the missing remnant in the fabric of our future. There are so many different parts to each of us, and there are so many of us. If we can envision the future we desire, we can work to bring it into being. We need all the different pieces of ourselves to be strong, as we need each other and need each other's battles for empowerment. That surge of power you feel inside you now does not belong to me, nor to your parents, nor your professors. That power lives inside of you. It is yours. You own it, and you will carry it out of this room. And whether you use it or whether you waste it, you are responsible for it. Good luck to you all. Together, in the conscious recognition of our differences, we can win, and we will. A luta continua. The struggle continues. I would invite you to rise in body or spirit and in voice, for we would be one.
Our river flows.
We are on a journey toward redemption. We have lived a year filled with lamentation, with the strength of generations, the failures of the everyday, and the deep down, gritty messiness that is the promise of our salvation. There is inherent goodness that exists between and among us, and I want to honor the weary, ragged miracle that is our living tradition. Oh, my loves, the last time I got to address you in this great assembly, it was a time of renewed promise, of reinvestment in the best of who we know ourselves to be. And it was a time when our energy was kindled a bit by fear, right? Fear that we might lose one another, fear that naming our entanglement with white supremacy might prove the undoing of our liberating faith. And we sent ourselves home with work to do, knowing that the struggles in our association were a small reflection of the larger struggles in our nation. We were called once again to accountability at home while working for justice in the world. And I have to say that this has been a year of steadfastness in religious leadership. It has been far from perfect. But there are those among us who have worked beyond all reason to keep us accountable to this journey of dismantling white supremacy within Unitarian Universalism. They have my profound gratitude, my unending respect. That's worth applauding. And when I say that we have had steadfastness in our religious leadership, I mean everyone who is associated with us. All of you who have heard your values and your dreams of faithful living expressed in our congregations and communities and chosen to cast your lot with us. All of you who have brought your heartache, your failure, your unbounded hope, and your potential to Unitarian Universalism. All of you most impacted by this work, who have remained in our communities even when we have offered you less than what your spirits deserve. On this night, when we honor those dedicated to the work of our living tradition, we honor each and every one of you. Now, it has also been a year when those before you on this chancel have not only responded to the needs of a nation in turmoil and an association deep in self-reflection, they have achieved the milestones that we ask of our religious professionals in the midst of that unending work. There are those before you retiring from career-long service and too often uncelebrated dedication to the healing and wholeness of this world. And we rightly pause to honor this depth of commitment in times when we do not entirely know what our journey will ask of us, only that the work itself is worthy of sacrifice. In a world where white supremacy and all other forms of oppression that feed on one another, all those logics of domination, we blame them on the most ludicrous things: sleep medication, the Bible, uninformed employees, habit, resource scarcity in a nation shaped by greed, religion itself. We are called more than ever to testify with our lives. The poet and prophet Audre Lorde told those embarking on a next great journey that it was their small actions, their everyday decisions, how they moved through this world, that not only gave them power, but defined our future. Notice she did not offer them a grand redeeming moment. She simply steered them back to the daily struggle, to what we might call our faithful living. This is about the journey of redemption. Now, I imagine that some of you are tired of this conversation. The work of dismantling oppression can feel endless at times. In our tiredness, we sometimes fear that speaking truth of our own complicity somehow invalidates the good that we have done in the world. But instead, I see it as a sign of our commitment to a task that must rest on our faithfulness if it will ever succeed. It will take a strength larger than our individual beliefs, larger even than our collective intention to reshape our surrounding culture. We reform Unitarian Universalism because we can never be the bearers of love and justice that the world so desperately needs if the foundation that sustains us is still perpetuating the very problems we long to solve. I know that we grow weary. Some of us because our lived realities rarely require that we build stamina. This is a skill, stamina, for staying in the struggle day by day, whether we want to or not. Some of us because the long-haul living with the daily requirement of justifying our humanity is unspeakably depleting. Some of us because our faith is profoundly challenged each time we debate whether and how much this work matters at this point in our history. So I want to remind us, myself included, that it is the promise of our faith itself that calls us to this work, and it is the integrity of living the values that we bear witness to in the world that requires us to focus our energy in this way. Beloveds, we are the theological inheritors of teachings on universal salvation. There is no winnowing out of the supposedly unworthy that can be named sacred among us. It is our very universalism that is at stake when we turn away from the impact that our institutions have on the very same groups and communities that society encourages us to dehumanize and make small. This is not a new story. When I look for something to hold on to in these days when the death struggles of institutionalized white supremacy and heteropatriarchal capitalism are attacking every group thrown to the margins to justify unearned privilege and immoral gains, I turn to the wisdom of activists who have long taught us that our liberation is collective. Many of us know the words attributed to Australian Indigenous activist Lilla Watson: "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." Watson herself reminds us that this wisdom was grown collectively from activists and organizers over the years, so I want to bring us back to one of our own, to Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, who is remembered. She's worth celebrating. Harper is remembered for teaching us that we are all bound up together. Right? Collective salvation was not a new idea in her day, though she does predate the theologians we best know in our tradition who support this worldview. So in 1866, flanked by white allies Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony at the 11th National Women's Rights Convention in New York City, Frances Ellen Watkins Harper insisted that we are all bound up together in one great bundle of humanity, and society cannot trample on the weakest of its members without receiving the curse in its own soul. Harper, a free-born Black woman who belonged to both Unitarian and AME churches, lived her life using her relative privilege to fight for the freedom of her people, all of her people. This beautifully intersectional abolitionist organized for women's suffrage alongside the ending of slavery and civil rights for all. She challenged us on the dire consequences of oppression and how the violence that we inflict on those we convince ourselves are less worthy harms not only those whose sacredness we dishonor, but irrevocably violates our own souls as well. Now, I'm not going to continue quoting this speech because the accepted ableist language of her time has no place in a modern pulpit, but her wisdom belongs here. So I want us to understand that we are also inheritors of Harper's insistence that there is a level of immorality worse than the systematic oppression we are giving so very much of ourselves to uproot from our beloved communities. When the poetry poured from this Black mother's heart, she unflinchingly called the nation to account for reaching out to peoples of African descent in time of great need, and then utterly rejecting them once again in times of safety. Beloveds, I'm not suggesting that we are repeating the depths of infamy, to use Harper's words, of Civil War America, but I am experiencing echoes that honestly frighten me. The journey toward redemption includes truth-telling, and I'm going to ask you to bear with me for a minute, trusting that I really know, that every congregational and community situation is complicated, just as I know that we can do better, that I can do better. This is a year when we have rightly thanked our gifted religious educators for their compassionate investment in our faith formation through the white supremacy teach-ins. And I have heard anecdotally that this is also a year when too many of our religious educator colleagues from a wide range of racial and ethnic identities, including our white co-conspirators, have struggled with ministerial supervisors who aren't as committed to this work. This is a time when more than 800 of our congregations have engaged in communal learning about dismantling white supremacy, and it is also a time that we have needed interventions from the UUA and received negotiated resignations from religious professionals of color at an unprecedented level. Let me be clear. When we do this work, we almost always ask more of the people most impacted by it. We project our greatest fears onto them, and then we allow the system to remove them, rather than sustain the deep, culture-changing work required for us to truly live our values in the world. And this is not just about race or ethnicity. It's true, but it's not really joyous, right? It's not just about race or ethnicity. It's about every disempowered group in leadership. So I have an ask of you. I would ask you to make it part of your faithful living to learn the stories of our religious leaders who live with disabilities, who identify as transgender, non-binary, or gender non-conforming. Learn about how our congregations are treating women or making space for people with a range of class identities, how they're embracing queer religious professionals or responding to the leadership of people of color. Notice the things that our beloveds feel justified in saying to us about our appearances, particularly to those of us who are fat. This list goes on and on. It is past time that we stop expecting extra help from those we impact the most and then burden them with behaviors that come from our own wrestling with grief and dismay in the aftermath. Let us find better ways to care for our souls in times of change. I'm begging you. The journey toward redemption is about truth-telling and lamentation and owning our wrongs. And at the same time, it is about claiming that profound possibility that calls us forward. We are the inheritors, it's true, of the legacies of white supremacy, but also of an unimaginable grace, of certainty in the possibility of our redemption, of weaving a tapestry of leadership that may not yet be what we long for, but is called to be the richest expression of humanity's sacredness. We believe in human capacity great enough, a God loving enough, values strong enough, communities dedicated enough, and I pray leaders humble enough to move us toward redemption. And I know that we know that redemption is a shared ministry that means everyone, that elevates all, that seeks out those suffering, neglected places in the world and breathes the holy back into them. Redemption is a professional religious leadership that is humble, that apologizes, and that limits its own power to move us toward a greater truth. Moving in that direction means trying even when we don't know how it will ever come to pass, because the struggle itself is holy. It means celebrating the successes that do exist among us, lifting those, but then putting them to service of creating greater success. And at the same time, it is modeling that the reality of our failings is not more powerful than the inherent goodness that we teach. We are left asking ourselves, what will we risk for this grace? The thing is, I believe in our callings. I believe in us. Yes, many of us are called to professional religious leadership, and we agree to be there in the difficult moments, in the successes and celebrations, and we promise to wrestle and show up even when our hearts are breaking. But we also promise to understand that every member and friend of a Unitarian Universalist community is also there by calling. We are called collectively to this great experiment in communal salvation. Whether we arrived in this faith by birth or by choice, our everyday expressions of our values in the world matter desperately in these times. So friends, colleagues marking profound milestones in your professional service, what will you risk for this grace? Where lies your hope for our interwoven salvation? To my colleagues whose chosen absence we mourn, I mean those who have left us, not by death, but by choice. So to my colleagues whose chosen absence we mourn, and for all those who serve in spite of what has been done to them, is it strange to say that I remember you every time I watch Black Panther again? I do. It's during that moment at the end of the film where T'Challa asks Nakia, or tells her, I think I know a way that you can still fulfill your calling. Please stay. Oh, my loves, please, please stay. I believe in the power of our callings. I believe in saving the soul of our nation and that we cannot show up authentically for the struggle if we ignore the one right here, right in this beloved community of faith. I am asking you to love us even when we don't deserve you, but not at the expense of your health or well-being, whether physical or spiritual. But do lean in to the fierce and fabulous network of colleagues who share some of your identity-based experiences. And know, if you know nothing else, know that you are never alone. See, the good news is that we are in control of what we do with our daily living. If we, each one of us, represents a missing remnant in the fabric of our future, then together we can lean into a possibility that we have yet to fully experience in all of human history, a collective wholeness, an unassailable good. That is the kind of salvation that I am here to fight for in the small moments of every single day. So whether you are here in person or joining us online, or I hope researching our history at some future date to learn about the many ways that we held ourselves accountable on this journey toward redemption, I invite you to learn everything that you can from this gathering. Immerse yourself unapologetically in what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist in these days. Then go back out into the world and live, knowing that your faith matters. And may the poetry of our hearts set us free. Amen. Ashe, and blessed be.
Now please rise and body your spirit as we sing, There is a Love. Now we'll do it in a round. There is love holding me. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding me. I rest in this love. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding me. One more time. There is a love holding me. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding us. We rest holding on. We rest in this hope. We rest in this
Beloveds, can I ask you to take a breath into that place of knowing that sometimes defies words, and think about what you most long for in Unitarian Universalism. Think about it not as a step of things to do, but all that might actually be. Can you picture that in your mind's eye? When you've got it, give it wings. Release it into this space to meet the dreams and journeys of those around you. And may that possibility beyond all reason hold us as we go. Amen. Ashe. Blessed be.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way.
We are working to be free.
We are